I can't say I've always worn my PFD when kayaking, but ever since the accident, I always wear it. So in today's video, that's what we're breaking down. My injury, what I should have did, and what I did. Let's get to it.
Oh, this is the rock.
First off, you saw the clip of me evaluating the water. So my wife and I, we came up to this spot in the water. Now this was our first time ever on the Mulberry River. Now there's one spot on the river called the SAC. And that's where my injury happened at. One huge boulder, bigger than this wall behind me actually. And so as we approached the SAC, we saw a sign on the right side of the river. The sign said, "Warning, the SAC is ahead, stay right." When I came closer, I evaluated the spot, and the right side was very, very shallow and jagged. There was like a little island peninsula between the two ways. I'll show you in this picture here. So there's that little peninsula of rocks, and on the right side was very shallow, jagged rocks. Apparently the river water was too low that day to go through there. But I should have took it either way. Got out and walked the bank side and never ventured the way I did. So after noticing it was too shallow, well, I was like, well, I'm gonna stay right as tight as I can to that peninsula in the middle, and hopefully I'll be able to scoot by the big boulder without touching it. Boy, was I wrong. I slammed up against it. Yeah. My kayak during that time was the Wilderness Systems Radar 115. And it was a wide footprint, it was a slow boat. My wife, she had a 10-foot Wilderness Systems Tarpon 100. And she was able to get past that section. Her boat was a little bit smaller, it's lighter, it's a little bit more agile. And she was able to divert the section. So in the clip, you see me up against the boulder like this. I got my left side against the rock. The only way off this boulder was going straight where all that river current was going around off the point. So, first of all, here's the big boulder right here. So here was that shallow peninsula right here with the jagged rocks, very shallow water over here. I didn't want to take my kayak on this side of the peninsula through all that shallow rock scratching up my boat. So what I tried to do was hug this line right here, but unfortunately the water was going straight into the rock. Let me use blue. Straight into the rock and diverting around. This was the path that the water was going. So I was trying to hold this tight line here, but it forced me right there. So I was sitting right there in the middle of the rock, almost a little bit to the back side where the little eddy was. There's like a little eddy right here where the water wasn't swift. That's where I kind of sat and tried to evaluate how to get out of the situation and evaluate life a little bit. After determining I couldn't do anything else except for go here, that's what I decided to do. Here was my mistake. So I put my left arm up on the boulder, put my paddle down in the kayak, and started working my way down the boulder with my left arm. Once my nose reached right here, the water started going over the top of my nose. When it did that, naturally the water was going over this way, and naturally my kayak was starting to capsize that direction. So when I started to capsize, I grabbed that rock as hard as I could and tried to pull down and try to shift my hips to pop my nose back out of the water. Well, Mother Nature just right across the face. She's way stronger than I am. So what took place was my nose didn't pop out of the water, no. My shoulder popped out of socket, and that was the problem. How do you dislocate your arm? A huge force forcing your arm in this direction will pop it out of socket, and that's what took place. When my arm was up on the boulder, the force of the water and me trying to shift my nose back out of the water at the same time, something had to give, and that force right there threw my shoulder behind me and popped it out. Here is my acromion process, and there's my glenoid. That's the the cup where my arm goes into. Okay, so here is my arm right there, and I am not an artist. The force was so great that my bone in my arm hit the bottom part of my glenoid right here and broke that section off, like broke it. Not only did it dislodge from my joint and dislocated it, it came out and down. It was hanging down. Came out and down hanging. You could see my acromion process protrude through my shirt a little bit. I broke my glenoid, full dislocation of my shoulder, and tore my labrum, all in a matter of seconds. You'll see me climbing on the rock in this next shot after I floated down. And I was just kind of in a locked position. I can move my elbow and my hand and all that, but my shoulder was locked out. I just had no function in it whatsoever. So it made things challenging.
That's not good.
No.
Can you move your fingers?
Yeah, I can move my fingers.
I could tell up there when I was watching, I'm like, oh, he did something to his shoulder, his arm.
I can't get it out of this position.
Okay.
Here's some things I did right. Number one, I was not alone. My wife, she was there with me floating. She had to retrieve my kayak, pull it to the side of the bank. She had to retrieve my paddle. Everything was just dislodged. One of my tips to you all in swift water, always go with someone. If you do go alone, by some chance, you're like, I'm good, I can do it, I highly suggest you make a plan. Make a float plan. Let the responsible person that's staying back home, let them know what you're doing, what route you're taking, how long it's going to take you to do that route, and expect you to be home by a certain time. Make sure you have a float plan if you're by yourself, or even if you're going with someone else. Float plans are always great. Study the water, study the hazards, study everything out, and be prepared for the worst. Now, the second thing I did right, and I had going for me, was I had this on. Do you know it's very, very hard to swim when you only have one arm and the other one's broken? All right? Very, very challenging. So that's why a PFD is very handy. You can just lay on your back and float down. You don't have to swim in a PFD. You might have to steer occasionally and try to divert things, but you don't have to swim. You can rely on the personal flotation device. The third thing I did right was I brought a rope. This wasn't the rope I had that day, but this is just some paracord, for example. In this clip, you'll see me take a rope, tie our kayaks together, and basically my kayak turned into a floating gurney. My wife had to paddle me the 2.5 miles left in our little trip back to our vehicle, the takeout point, and take me to the hospital. But without a rope or a string or something very, very strong, we'd have been up the creek without a paddle. I do want to share this awesome app that my wife and I use all the time. This app is called the Life 360 app. It's a free app. You can pay for the extra features and all that, but we just do the free version, and she can go on there and click on the app and view where I'm at all times. You can actually scroll in and get more specific on that map, that satellite. All right, these are things that I didn't have with me, but I wish I did in the heat of the moment. Like after the accident happened, for example, number one, we reached for our phones. Guess what? We had no cell service. Not a satellite was picking us up. We had zero service to call emergency or help. Now I had a whistle, but there wasn't anybody for miles. We're out in the middle of nowhere. So a whistle's great when you're in close proximity of people. One thing I do wish, which I'm saving up for now, is a satellite phone. Like one of those in-touch ones where you can send a message out and get a message in, or one that you can call out or send an SOS out. Number 2, I wish my float plan was a little more detailed. Number 3, one thing I do wish that helped out my wife trying to collect all my junk after the boulder was I wish I'd leashed stuff properly. For example, a GoPro, a waterproof GoPro that would have caught the whole disaster and made epic content for you all. But guess what? It went under and never came up. If I was by myself and my paddle not being leashed to my kayak, my paddle went one way, my kayak went the other way. It still went along with the current, but they were separate. And luckily my paddle float. I found out that day that it floats, thank goodness, because I did not pack a spare paddle. That's another thing. You know, pack a spare paddle or put some type of flotation around your paddle so if it does get loose or knocked off, it's still gonna float, you'll be able to get to it. Now we're getting to the end. Here's some safety things that I would consider taking. You know, pack one of your towing straps. This is just a towing strap, but you can use this to tie 2 boats together. You can use this as a tourniquet. Pack a dry bag, put some dry clothes in here, some dry warm clothes in here. Have a towel in here. Pack some spare clothes just in case you do capsize, you have some dry clothes to put back on. Wear a PFD. On your PFD, have a knife on there to help cut you out of bad situation. Make sure you have a whistle attached as well. Mine's inside this pocket. But wear this PFD. Packed a headlamp. So pack some type of lighting with you as well for safety. If you have a sit-in kayak, you need a bilge pump. If you have a sit on top, you might need a sponge or something to get that water out if you do get some water in. You might think about buying, it's about $49, a throw rope, a throw bag. That way if someone does get in a bind, they're pinned underneath a boulder, you can toss that throw bag at them and pull them out of the situation. First aid, have some first aid with you. You might need a pair of these to help clip that hook out of your hand. No telling what you're doing, but be prepared for those situations. If you're fishing, you want to be able to take that hook out of your hand, not have it in your hand the whole entire time trying to paddle with it. Paddling with a crankbait in your hand is not ideal. Make sure you have some way to reach out to someone if there is a problem. For me, I'm saving up for that satellite phone. I know they're expensive, but after my whole incident, they're very, very important to have. Like I said, I did want to share with you what happened in my kayak accident. What I learned from the accident, what I wish I had, what I did right, what I did wrong, what I didn't have. So there's a lot of things I learned from this, but one thing for sure that I learned that I will keep for me for the rest of my life and pass it down to my kids is I'm gonna wear my PFD, no matter what. Well, thanks for watching as always. I hope to catch you on the next adventure. Stay safe out there.